Dr. Greer, I do not think it was a good idea to shut the government down. I believe Republicans wanted the government shut down. I think they're craving it. They don't want government. They would have decided what was essential, what's non essential. I know we barely have DOE and other departments hanging by a thread, but I think they would have furloughed all those employees. I have had folks call into this show afraid what would happen if there was a government shutdown. Now, I don't like the way he delivered it. I don't know why he waited till 2 days before. I don't know why they can't all get on the same page. But I think we would have had, I think at this point we're at harm reduction. And I think that we would have had no leverage whatsoever if the government was shut down. And I think they won it. I think that they would let it shut down for 6 months, 9 months, however long it will be. And then Democrats, they'd have to concede and compromise. They'd have to open back up to the same exact terms. I think they really, really, and that demon, Russell Vought, that MFer, he wants this shit shut. That shit is in Project 2025. So I don't like Chucky. I truly, truly don't. But I don't like the way he delivered it. He should have sat down with folks with Hakeem Jeffries and they should have all been on one page. At least look like y'all agree. You
Look like
know
it.
what I mean?
Well,
But
I don't
I thought it
disagree
would have
with
been
you.
horrible.
I don't disagree with you. I think your theory holds, especially since, let's be clear, if the government was shut down, the Republicans would have blamed the Democrats. And we know that there is no strategy for the Democrats to come back and say, you control the executive, you control the legislative, you control this, and this. There is no articulation of that statement's not true, and here are all the reasons why. So the Democrats would just essentially have the country believing, yeah, it's our fault. So what you just laid out,
Rear, they couldn't even sell the infrastructure bill in a good way. They couldn't even sell the American Rescue Plan in a good way.
what you
They
mean
couldn't
the
even
American
sell some of the
Rediscovery Back to Work Act, colon, something, 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 something.
right.
Like, I mean,
Exactly.
hire some people from McKinsey so you can at least get some branding. Because the only reason why we know it's Obamacare is because the Republicans named it for us.
Sure enough. And then
We
Obama
didn't even name
remixed
it.
that and made it a good thing. Yeah,
Right.
Obama
But
managed to remix it. Yeah.
exactly. But it's like we couldn't even get that together. So I just, what also concerns me though is that, and I understand the frustration, I'm right there with it. So now we have larger conversations, and I know you'll talk about these over the next few weeks and months coming, where people are like, we got to get a new party. And we have lots of really smart leaders in our country saying that who are non-political. Um, I think that that's a hard conversation to have, largely because for those of us who understand parties in this country and what George Washington warned us about as far as parties in this country, in his farewell address, is that we, for whatever reason, organize ourselves in two parties. That is how America has always done it. And when we have tried to deviate several times, one of two things happens. This third party that comes up with these interesting ideas, it either subsumes one of the parties or it gets subsumed by one of the parties. So I think that we're focusing so much on like, we got to leave the Democratic Party. And it's like, okay, so to what? To what and to what end? Or would a strategy be to just actually, as you said, we've got new leaders running, we've got new crops of public servants who want to be there, maybe supporting them and giving them the education and the money, political tithing that I talk about all the time, tithing into the government you'd like to see, as opposed to if we're trying to create new wheels over here, I don't know if we have the time to do that.
Yeah,
Sometimes you got to
Dr.
drive your
Cleveland,
hoopty and put a new transmission in it,
right.
as opposed to let's save up for a new car. I don't think we have time to do that.
But what wears me out is that I hear people talk about a third party, people who are left, whatever you want to call it. And I'm like, but we can barely even get people to vote now. You
Thank
know,
you.
Donald Trump, Donald Trump did not increase his voter base. He
Right.
got around 1 or 2 million, the same as he got in 2020. He didn't really increase it. It's if we have 92 million that people who aren't voting, the majority of them, quote unquote, Democrats or independents, how the hell are we going to start a third party when we can't even get people to show up and vote for the really deeply progressive folks who are in the Democratic Party? Everybody's mad at John Fetterman. We could have had Malcolm Kenyatta. but nobody voted. Nobody came out and voted during the primaries. So I think for me, the larger question is, and maybe this is just as elusive, is how do we get out these people who are just sitting on their ass and they're not voting, or they decide to protest a particular person during the presidential election when other folks are telling you the opposite guy is going to be even worse. Like I just and I
So
heard go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say two things. One, I talk to my students about this all the time. We have to give people someone to vote for, give them a reason to be inspired to actually go out and vote. We do know, to be fair, in some communities, we just keep making it harder and harder to vote. So people are like, you know what? I'm not going to do this,
That's true.
right?
There is voter
Like,
suppression. Yeah,
exactly. And voter suppression is real. So it's like, if
it
I
is.
have a
Yeah,
former record, like, and I move states, my former state would let me vote, but this one doesn't. And we've used these test cases of black women and imprisoned them. So it's like, we definitely use tactics here. Um, I think that if we've got a 94% incumbency rate for people who keep going back to Congress, and so we know on the local levels, especially, going to Albany, right? I mean, you can go there forever because people aren't paying attention. And I tell my students all the time, if you can list all these real housewives of Nowheresville, you better be able to
okay.
list every single district leader, and you should know your state senator, your state legislator, your city council member. I want you to know who runs the water department in your city. Like, we have to know as much about our government as we do all these reality shows. That is like my sort of message to my students. But I also think with this 94% incumbency rate, where most of the action is in the primary, so that's the election, oftentimes, let's take a
Mhm.
place like New York, we have closed primaries. So you have to be a registered Democrat to participate. And then that's where all the action is. And the general is kind of like a rubber stamp. Someone in the opposing party puts up a little sacrificial lamb, but we know you ain't going to win because all the big action happened previously. So, for example, in New York, our mayoral primary is in June 24th. That's where all the action is. And then the election's November 5th, in November. I think it's the first Tuesday. But
That's a great example too. We could have had Maya Wiley, and Maya Wiley was
that's November
campaigning
4th.
everywhere. We got Mayor Eric Adams.
Well, that's a ranked choice voting system that we didn't explain to any of
Right,
the
John?
voters, and here we are. But also, to be fair, Maya Wiley and Catherine Garcia, everyone's like, well, if one of them had dropped out, then we would have, sort of, you add up their votes, they would have definitely beaten Eric Adams. And it's like, well, neither one of them dropped out. So, and that's their prerogative to do so. However, we don't see people coming together to build teams to say, like, okay, this person is a problem. Why don't we work together to figure out how do we make sure he doesn't get in? It's politics. That's what it is. But this is the dirty little secret. It's Democrats and Republicans who are not interested necessarily in bringing more people into the fold. Because if you're an elected official and you've spent all this time, money, and energy, and you know exactly who your electorate is, you are not clamoring to make it easier for other people to vote because those other people might not be for you, especially in a primary system where all the action is. So both parties are reticent to make it easier to vote. Both parties are a little reticent to have these newcomers come into the fold because that messes up a strategy that they've worked on and invested in for quite some time.